before the homily, just a couple of things that don't really matter that much. My old phone kept melting down and finally melted down, and I have a new one. Now, I don't even complain about Apple making it every 5 whatever years or so, you got to get a new one. And it really is fairly amazing how all this stuff syncs, and still what a pain in the rear for an old man to like change passwords, etc. But we did it. I don't know why we're celebrating this. There's one. And last week, I did ask for prayers for, among other things, a big presentation I gave on Monday. It was the National Convention of Child Abuse Prevention leaders from around the country. And I would tell you that there was, evidently a lot of tears. I certainly heard tons of laughter. And I felt good that God had a message, a number of things through me anyway. So and I said my final word of thanks, and people are applauding, and I head down the stage. There's some black stairs to make sure I didn't trip, and the MC's coming up, and she goes, "Look up." I looked up, and the entire room was giving me a standing ovation. So that was a very sweet thing. So thank you for your prayers. May God use, all of our efforts for good. And finally, for now, this weekend we celebrate First Communion here at 3 different masses. Join me in praying for these young ones here or anywhere and their families, to nurture in them those values that last. And Jesus will talk about himself as the vine and we are the branches. So I'll try to use that as a metaphor and hope it makes some sense for them and for all of us. Again, thanks for joining us. Isn't this one plant beautiful? Creation is marvelous, mysterious, magnificent. Even just, for example, this one leaf. We would do well to be in awe, because even this one leaf is itself amazing. And the reason that this leaf is right now so healthy and beautiful and strong is because it is connected to the plant, which puts its roots into the soil, which allows it to draw nutrients and water. And then this leaf, vibrant, beautiful, filled with life and beauty, emerges. And to our boys and girls, please don't do this at home. But watch what happens when I take this one leaf off the plant. Again, don't do this at home and say Father Joe said. Well, not much really, right? It still looks just fine, just like it did before. Except that on the inside, it is dying, because it's no longer connected to the plant whose roots go into the soil. On the outside it looks fine, but on the inside it's dying. Something like that can happen to us. Today Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Remain connected to me and to my way of life, and my way of living, and you will know true life now as well as at the hour of your death. Now. Well, are we connected to him these days? Really, are we connected to his way? If not, what are we really rooted in? As any farmer or gardener would tell us, as Jesus would tell us, not all vines are the same, not all soil is life-giving. And I'll tell you what I have learned over my years. And I've learned it from the best, the wisest, most loving and alive people I've ever known. They have shown me that the way of Jesus, his way, is what truly gives life. And I am old enough to know they're right. The way to life is staying connected to Jesus and his ways of living. You know, I need to keep my connection to him to make sure I root myself in his values, what he stood for, how he lived. Because that's what keeps me alive in here, the best and truest part of me, alive. It's true for you as well. Because if we're not careful, we can get more and more disconnected from Jesus and his ways and what he stood for. But when the tough times come, and they come for us all, the way of Jesus is what will help me be okay. It really is. It's what will keep me most alive in here. And this is also the part of me which, upon my death, I take into the life beyond this life. And it's just so easy to get kind of disconnected, to stop nourishing our connection to Jesus and his ways. I mean, we get so darn busy, right? Hard to get to church with soccer. Or maybe we kind of start to get selfish. Maybe even mean-spirited, and that starts to choke off our vibrancy, our true vibrancy. Or perhaps we plant a portion of our souls into the soil of anger and bitterness. There's a lot of that. And something in me dies with all of those things. As I mentioned, this weekend we celebrate First Communion at 3 of our Masses. And at those Masses, you know, I'll have a word to moms and dads and to all who brought these kids forward, and to thank them for bringing them to First Communion. And I will remind them of the promise they made before God and God's people on the day they had these kids baptized. They promised to raise these kids in a home where at least one parent goes to Mass on a regular basis, where Jesus is talked about and talked to, and where service to others is witnessed as a value. Sunday Mass is one of the best ways to live that commitment, to nurture that kind of a home, because at Mass, we are connected in a unique and profound way to the vine who is Jesus. It's first, we gather with others who are just trying to be loving and true. And that connection is so important. It makes a difference for us, whether we are aware of it or not. I know it makes a difference for me when people show up. And when they don't show up here, I know they're showing up somewhere. That just encourages me as well. And then we go to the amble where we listen to the scriptures, where Jesus coaches us about what gives life and what doesn't, how to live a great and beautiful and important life, not an easy life, but a joy-filled one. And then we go to the altar where the kids are going to make First Communion, where we've made it before, right? And are fed with the best food of all, Jesus, who loves us so much that he says, I give you me. And I'll say to them, and moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas and godparents, if you've been a bit disconnected, now's the time to reconnect. You can. It's worth it. And I know for parents, you can't assure that when your kids grow up, they'll stay connected to Jesus and his ways. And we do the best we can. But most importantly, we stay connected to those ways. And we give them the example of our lives and staying connected to ourselves. That alone makes a huge difference. I'll tell the boys and girls that after communion we'll chat with Big Al for a bit. But I will remind them that being loving and kind like Jesus is the true way, perhaps the only real way to really be happy in life, to have a meaningful, joy-filled living. And there's going to be plenty of other vines growing who will have their ear or soil to plant them into, which will say you got to be rich or famous or powerful. Those might be fine, but goodness, that's what lasts. That's vibrancy. And I'll thank them for all the ways they stay connected to Jesus and loving like he did, because it will make their lives better. It also makes mine better. And I believe that the more each of us stay connected to Jesus and the virtues he lived, we stay most alive on the inside, no matter what we look on the outside, right? I'll leave the leaf I take off on the altar as a reminder that we need to stay connected to Jesus. Because otherwise, we might look just fine on the outside, but on the inside, something is dying. But when we work to live his ways, we will be so alive, truly, and deep down happy, now and forever.